You know, the man to Ewok ratio is getting a little one-sided here, isn't it? Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to My Expanding Universe, a show where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best I know how. You know, folks have been saying, Matt, what about the comic books? You've been leaving the comic books alone. Well, let's get back to those comic books and let's go to Star Wars Republic issues 65 and 66 by John Ostrander. Now in this, Jedi Mace Windu leads a strike team of Jedi to go after the Bounty Hunters Guild because they've been hunting after Jedi. So what did I think about this one? Well, I thought it was pretty good. Of course it's going to be great. It has John Ostrander, right? You got to love this guy. Mace Windu shows his assertiveness or proactiveness, depending on how you want to look at it. It features a few other Jedi Masters as well. And it's a pretty solid story. Like I said, it's only 2 parts, and I don't want to ruin much about it. After that, you need to go to the next issue, which is Star Wars Republic 67, written by Randy Stradley. Now, in that, Anakin bucks orders. There's a command that he needs to run a diversionary mission, but Anakin says, no way. Enough Jedi lives have been lost, because he's still having flashbacks from the Battle of Jabim, which took place a while back now. And so Anakin basically takes matters into his own hands and kind of goes rogue for this one issue. This one by Randy Stradley is really good because the past haunts Anakin. And we haven't talked about the Battle of Jabim in a while now. And usually the books kind of, I mean, there's, like I told you, there's a few books that mention the battle. But it really resonates more in the comic book area because they knew that, you know, you've been reading the comic books, you know that was still a big battle. And people were still online talking about how good that series was. So it makes sense that they would harken back to a story plot that everyone loved. And I like how Randy Stradley did this. He kind of gave flashbacks on it. And, you know, the events of that war is still bothering Anakin, which is very similar to real war, right? When we have a real war going on, people are still haunted by the memories of past big epic battles, right? You talk to, you know, the little skirmishes like Vietnam to World War I, World War II. I've been watching a lot of documentaries on that recently, and, you know, those people had nightmares for weeks after getting home from the battle, months later, years even. War does things to you, and I think the comic books really brought that out in the characters. They looked at, you know, post-war victims, soldiers and whatnot, and say, okay, what kind of trauma would a Jedi go through? Because remember, a Jedi is supposed to be in touch with their feelings, and most were. They were troubled times here and there. But Anakin, especially, is a guy who's in tons of turmoil, right? Because he's not as well balanced as the rest of the Jedi. He has his feelings on his sleeve. So his thoughts are different. He would fall privy to these type of things that happen to people who go through war. So, and I think it actually molded and shaped him into becoming Darth Vader. But that's a topic for another time. Now, of course, Star Wars Republic is always a hit. I've even said before that this is some of the best stuff that you will see in the Clone Wars is from Star Wars Republic, because they did the Clone Wars like nothing else. And when you're reading through any of these comic books, you just feel, and I mean, yes, some of that is visionary because the art can be really good in some of these, and it was all done pre-Dave Filoni's Clone Wars. Not that that makes any difference. It's just that back in the day, that was what we had for Clone Wars, and Clone Wars was very grown up. It didn't have the, let's be honest, folks, if you love or hate Filoni's Clone Wars, it was for kids. It was dumbed down a little bit. I'm not saying there wasn't dark things that happened or bad things, and they made some cartoons for adults, but they mainly made it for kids, and you could tell. And it kind of watered down the Clone Wars for me a little bit. But before then, what we had is we had solid comic books and some pretty good novels here and there. I haven't gotten to all the novels yet, but the comic books really showed the grit. And it doesn't even have to be told visually even. I think if those stories, like the Battle of Jabim, can you imagine a novel about that? That would probably be even better, depending if you have the right person write it. And I'm not trying to discredit the comic books and say, oh, those stories don't belong in comic books. No, man. Dark Horse owned the Clone Wars, in my opinion, and they put out more solid stories in these two. Of course, when you got John Strider, Hayden Blackman, Randy Stradley, just to name a few, who are writing for you, you know it's going to be solid hits just about every time. Now, one question that I got from someone who watches the YouTube channel said, Matt, why are you putting stuff like Shatterpoint and Karen Travis's Clone Wars, you know, way far in the timeline? And I just want to say it feels like it's way far, but if you notice, I've been going through all the comic books and all the short stories too. That's why it's taken us so long. And you're saying, well, Matt, yeah, but I see other timelines out there who put these books a lot earlier, and then you're putting the books later, the comic books here. What was your thinking? Well, my thinking was this. First off, if you notice, once we got to the Clone Wars actual novelization from Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, I just dumped a bunch of Dave Filoni Clone Wars stuff in there that happened within this window. And then I'm going to start filling it in with other, what I consider better, Clone Wars stories. Now, the reason I put these comic books ahead of all that is, one, now that you've read Shatterpoint, you got a little better thought of Mace Windu, right? So I think you would see this little two-part adventure in better eyes, knowing the thought process that Matthew Stover wrote out in his novel. And so, like I said, I think that's the way I read it, and it just paid off. Because, you know, by then you had an idea of, you know, well, a better idea of what was going on in Mace Windu's head. Not that it matters, and it's not a detriment to the story. If you haven't read Shatterpoint, then you won't get these two comic books. No, you'll get them fine, but I'm just saying I think it sounds better if you place Shatterpoint before these stories. Now, for Anakin's thing, I think the Battle of Jabim needs to happen, oh gosh, maybe it took place a year later or whatnot, since this Randy Stradley one-shot adventure happened, because I think it shows where those memories still haunt him. And if you read them in this chronological order, enough time has passed while you're reading all this stuff to still remember the Battle of Jabim and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was a long time ago, and have the arc go ahead. If you read through all the Republic, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you did that, then the Battle of Jabim took place just a few issues ago. Well, I guess a little bit more than that, but you know what I'm saying. You could read through the comic books really quick, and so here comes the Battle of Jabim. Oh yeah, I read that a few days ago. If you're reading comic books every night, then you really rush through it, and it doesn't have the impact that I think the storyline deserves. So that's the reason I put it in there. Remember, this is my timeline as best I know how. It's not perfect, and you may have your own. But in my opinion, this is where I would put the perfect timeline through the Clone Wars. And to my knowledge, no one's really done something with, the comic books, the short stories, the web comics, for crying out loud. So it isn't easy, so cut me just a little bit of a break, but that is my reasoning for putting the stories in this order. All right, folks, that is all I have for now. I will see you next time.